You're listening to a podcast of spurious morality.
Hello and welcome to a podcast of spurious morality. I'm Johnstone and with me this week is Gareth. Hello.
Hi there.
And we're carrying on with our mission to listen to every single Big Finish monthly range story. And we are starting at number 39 this time. So we've listened to 38 already and talked all about them. And now we're going to do a few more. It's a bit of a mixed bag this time, it has to be said. Like, I'm feeling as though we've not quite got the consistency of quality that we've had over the past few. There's a few here that we're maybe going to struggle with a little bit. But it's all interesting. It does keep it interesting. And I've always said that even in the worst of all Doctor Who ever, there's still something good to be found. Still trying to find the good in Fear Her, but I am told it's there. That was a cheap. That was a cheap
That's the
pop.
good bit.
Yeah, no, that was unfair of me. That was cheap.
Oh, I know it's off topic. Good bit in Fear Her when he parks the TARDIS at the wrong angle. That always makes me laugh.
Yes, and then flips it round.
Yeah, that's good.
Yes. So at least the first couple of minutes of Fear Her are all right. Anyway, yes, I'm being mean, and we're not here to pick on Fear Her. That's another podcast for another time. Season by season, we'll get there soon, though. Anyway, in the meantime, we have got Bang Banga Boom to talk about first of all. And I will let you set us off with your review. Go ahead.
I've struggled with this one over the years because I keep comparing it to the writer's last effort, and, well, Bang Bang a Boom isn't as funny as The One Doctor. That's perhaps an unfair way to look at it, however, as this one isn't really making the same kind of joke. I'm still not sure if the joke is successful. There's a general satirical bit going on here about Star Trek, Babylon 5, the Eurovision Song Contest, and of course Doctor Who, which keeps it all fairly light and silly, but it's still not quite a pantomime, so it then feels like a stretch to do fourth wall jokes as well, like the overly dramatic stings and the record scratch fake ending. The story, about a song contest or Ursat's peace conference beset by murders, where the Doctor and companion must assume the identities of victims so they can investigate, might be knowingly done to death, but it's still a fairly straight plot, so it can just be funny all on its own without the added production tinsel. It often is, particularly when the Doctor goes on a surprisingly successful date. The Eurovision stuff is all worth a chuckle, particularly with David Toohen's Logan commentating. The story still has a few issues, like going on too long and having too many red herrings, and even a couple of jokes or plot points that feel redundant. One crew member revealed to be unsuccessfully winging it is interesting, but two feels more significant than it actually ends up being. On the whole, though, I think I've reached a point where I can stop worrying and at least like Bang Bang a Boom. It's often very witty and it has a great cast, notably including Graham Garden and Dragonfire's Patricia Quinn. If you haven't seen her eccentric interview on the season 24 box set, get to it. Sylve and Bonnie are on terrific form here, slotting all of this comfortably and affectionately into season 24. If nothing else, of the two Doctor Who stories that reference Eurovision, this isn't the one I'd give null poir. So I think, yeah, it sort of strives for that kind of panto thing that the One Doctor does, and I don't know if it really works or is needed on this one. I think this is more of a straight comedy.
So this was, it was supposed to be a tradition, really, wasn't it, that we get the Christmas panto now? And the One Doctor was the first, and did it very, very well because it was just an out and out pantomime. You're right.
Yeah.
This doesn't have its humour focused as well as the One Doctor does. Because the One Doctor's doing a panto, we just do the panto jokes. Whereas this kind of goes, well, we're going to have some panto jokes, and we're going to have some Star Trek jokes, and we're going to have some sort of daft innuendo thrown in there, and we're going to have Eurovision Song Contest. And it just kind of feels like that we're going to make lots of jokes about lots and lots of things here, and you lose that sort of fantastic, like I say, focus that the One Doctor had. It's the obvious comparison. Also, it's worth noting that we don't really get any more of these panto releases. This seems to be the
Mm.
second and last, which is, I think, a bit of a shame because I think there was probably something else to mine there. Big Finish has done other panto stuff, like its first ever release was a parody of a pantomime. Oh no, it isn't. So it's something they did well in the early days, but it just, yeah, this kind of gets lost trying to tell a Doctor Who story, whereas One Doctor doesn't really bother with that. I guess it tells a story. Obviously, it tells a Doctor Who story, but it's not exactly the priority. Whereas here, we genuinely have, there's a bit of a sort of Agatha Christie-esque plot going on, which Doctor Who does a lot and Doctor Who does quite well, but maybe not at its best here. I do like this one. It genuinely does have some individual moments of brilliance. My favourite will always be Let's Sing the Earth National Anthem, and they start singing the first few words of I Will Survive. That's a cracking joke. um,
I mean,
and
a lot of it is very funny. Yeah, I do like it.
yeah, I like Logan as well. That was very, very well done. And the idea of once they'd killed him off, they didn't know what to do really. Um, that worked quite well as well. So yeah, it does have those individual moments of brilliance, but I think as a comedy, it doesn't actually work that well. As a Doctor Who story, I think it does work quite well, even with everything else that's going on. The Star Trek parody's fun, but it's it's a Star Trek parody. There's only so much you can do with it,
They are a bit
and I think,
limited. I have to, in terms of
yeah,
funny bits, I have to give credit. I did touch on this anyway, but more specifically when the Doctor's on a date and this alien woman has got this incredible overpowering ability with men. She kind of presses him into her bosom, and you hear Sylvester do. It's hard to describe this, but very good pretend audio pressed into somebody's bosom acting,
yes,
and yeah, it's very very funny. So yeah, that bit was, listening to that was like, right, that's my favorite bit easily, because it's like the Seventh Doctor is so, kind of only he would work in that situation. I think maybe
yeah,
Patrick Troughton, but
yes. But I think that I think really that you have to do this with the Seventh Doctor and Mel because this is just so season 24.
oh yeah,
Like
definitely.
we're very, very close to Ken Dodd running around the port and that kind of thing here. Which I think you can like this without liking season 24. I think you can love this if you do like season 24. It's not trying too hard, and it doesn't feel fair to review it as if it were. It's supposed to be a bit of a laugh. It's supposed to kill 2 hours, and it does that quite well. It could probably lose 15, 20 minutes somewhere, and the record scratch ending actually felt like the right time for it to end. And then you still have about 25 minutes after that. It just sort
Yeah.
of, I'm all for a record scratch ending that then leads to maybe another 5 or 10 minutes. But wow, it felt like it had a whole other story to tell afterwards. Um, Reminds me of that Douglas Adams quote about, the storm are debated and some returns and says, and another thing. Um, sort of, yeah, it just sort of goes on a bit too much after that point. But you know what? It's solid. It's fun. We have a laugh with it. And in all honesty, I think the sort of funny panto stuff should have carried on. Um, What I'm curious now as to what the December release after this was, because I have a theory, and I'm just going to double check. Yes, it was Scherzo.
Oh, Merry Christmas. Yeah, definitely keeping up the comedy tradition there.
Yes, I thought it was Scherzo. It is Scherzo. Which, I mean, I guess that also had the Wormery just before. Is the Wormery a Panto release? Not
I
really.
think it's got a bit of music hall kind of thing. It was very melancholy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
It
it's not
it's got a
dissimilar.
bit of the whimsy tradition about it, I guess. But it's certainly not doing what this and the One Doctor does. Um,
No.
so yes, our next Christmas panto is Scherzo. Interesting. However, the next story we've got to discuss here and now would be, I think, an absolute cracker. It's Jubilee. What did you think?
Big Finish were on quite a roll here, having recently produced what is probably the most interesting Cyberman story. They somehow put out one of, if not the, most interesting Dalek stories as well. These are scripts by thoughtful writers, investigative stories that don't rely on the cliches we all know, and let's face it, quite enjoy. They're risks that paid off. Jubilee feels particularly risky as it's a Dalek story with primarily just one Dalek in it. It doesn't even speak until the end of part one, which is, I suppose, one of those Doctor Who cliches. We couldn't escape them all. But the context gives it enormous power. Jubilee does what all the best Dalek stories do, which is examine the impact of Daleks. You don't need a lot of them for that. Much like Shearman's The Holy Terror, this is set in an almost but not quite recognizable world filled with repellent people who do wicked things because they don't know how else to behave. He's in a satirical mood once again, only this time his target is more precise the trivialization of evil, in this case, the Daleks. Britain's obsession with the Blitz, the Nazis, and the Second World War is impossible to ignore here, as well as the rise of right wing political parties that somehow invoke Churchill while espousing the values of Hitler. Shearman's disgust at this sort of cognitive dissonance gives Jubilee a real fire. It's angry stuff. It's also very funny, of course, because it's Rob Shearman. We get to enjoy the absurd bells and whistles of post Dalek society, such as a dreadful movie trailer and a cadre of singing Dalekettes. However, much like the president, when his wife contracts her words, this story is always ready to unexpectedly lash out. There are murders and mutilations all over it, as well as an unforgettable rug pull that goes from wittily suggesting a Whovian character that will surely excite everybody listening to suddenly producing another character in upsettingly reduced circumstances. But even the prisoner in the tower has jokes to make. Having one Dalek allows Shearman to really dig into what makes them interesting and scary. Nick Briggs does some of his finest work here with this almost pitiable Dalek that seeks orders, has confusing feelings about the only person to show it respect, Evelyn, but nevertheless continues to manipulate and murder anyway. It's a tightrope walk between sympathy and fear, and it's a bit of a masterclass in how to handle that. My hot take is that the TV episode Dalek, which very smartly used Jubilee as a template, didn't come close to the complexity on display here. That Dalek was quite a bit more sympathetic, despite everything, which was perhaps an oversimplification. No doubt that was the brief, as the story was equally about the Doctor and what he'd become. But there was far less room for the trivialization of evil. Colin Baker and Maggie Stables are fantastic here, swimming in disgust at the world around them, which they have, in some way, helped to create. The supporting cast is just as good, including Baker era alum Martin Jarvis, a man used to violent society in Doctor Who. It's a story with many rewards, but it is dark, and it deliberately lacks the relative upswing of the chimes of midnight. Jubilee presents a cautionary tale of sickness and madness, and there's nothing reassuring about its lessons. It's an impressive story that leaves me feeling more aware of the world and its dangers, as well as feeling slightly unclean. I should point out, this was one of the first three or four big Finnish stories I ever heard. So I think the friend of mine who shared several with me, uh, started me high up with the quality of these. But yeah, it's
It
pretty strong.
it
Now,
sounds
sorry.
no go on.
Well, I was just going to say, now and again, listening to it, I suddenly remembered that it wasn't Evelyn's first Dalek story. I don't know why that's worth mentioning, but so strange that she comes to this already knowing Daleks, not having to be frightened of.
Which I think does it a few favors actually, because she can just walk in and meet a Dalek and go, "Oh, you're a Dalek," and
Yeah.
get on with the interesting bit. Because if we'd have had a, "Oh, what are you? Oh no, you poor thing." If we'd have had all of that, I just don't think it would have been as effective. Like, you need Evelyn to know what's going on. Evelyn's great. Like we've she's been a bit more sporadic than when she first appeared, just because the Eighth Doctor has had massive blocks of stories and that kind of thing, and she didn't have a great deal to do in the Sandman. But I'm still really enjoying Evelyn. What a fantastic character! Like, we've still not really had another companion like her, and I think that obviously we're sort of past the baby steps of Big Finish. Will it work? Won't it? But she was definitely something that did make it work, and she's definitely something that's continuing to make it work, even though you've got other big, amazing things like ongoing Eighth Doctor adventures at this stage. Um, yeah, I love this. It's not my favorite Sherman, but that's like saying, well, it's only a 9.9 out of 10. Um, it's still absolutely cracking. It's still a standard far above the average Doctor Who story. Point me at any Doctor Who story. This is probably better than it. And it does do something wonderful with Daleks, and obviously choosing it as the template for bringing the Daleks back in 2005 was just a no-brainer. It must have been the obvious thing to do. And it worked. It's Daleks are a great episode. I agree with you. I think I prefer Jubilee, but Jubilee has twice the running time and gets to breathe and
Sure.
has a
Yeah.
fair few other things going on. And some of the characters that we have in this are better than the characters we have in Dalek and that kind of thing. Like Martin Jarvis, always absolutely wonderful in Doctor Who. He's just a great person to have involved with it. And yeah, Rochester was a nasty piece of work, but he played it so well. He always sort of kept you slightly sympathetic of this utterly vile character. And he does some nasty stuff. He chops somebody's hand off just so they fit inside the Dalek costume. It's it's that horrible, dark stuff that Sherman does so well. And it's immediately contrasted with something quite jolly and all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a really, really powerful listen. It's a really I mean, it's a highlight of this range, isn't it? In the same way that Chimes is, in the same way that Spare Parts is, Jubilee is one of those that you are always, always going to revisit to an extent. And your friend was absolutely right to have a go at this one. It's really, really good. The downside, I suppose, is most things must have seemed a bit of a disappointment after it.
It's hard to kind of reach these heights with Daleks again, and there are plenty of very, very good Dalek stories in Big Finish, but this is it like Spare Parts. It's investigating the idea of them in a way that I think doesn't happen very often. Like some of my favorite Dalek stories from the TV series are Power of the Daleks and Evil of the Daleks, and both of those are kind of more about what they do to the people around them. Um, Daleks leave a sort of imprint. They're like a disaster happening, like a tornado or something. And so the story is the people around them. And I think with other Doctor Who monsters, you tend to get a bit more bogged down in the monsters. And it happens with the Daleks a lot as well. With the 80s stories, I think those were much more interested in the Daleks themselves and what they were doing. But yeah, Jubilee is a good example of, you know, kind of going, well, what do they mean? Like, what is all that about? Um, and really kind of digging in and going, well, what about that can we see? Because they were, designed to be sort of parodies of familiar kinds of evil that we know. So, Yeah, it's refreshing to kind of dig back into that.
I think it's very easy to forget that a Dalek it's not just a tank. It's there's a living creature in there that has been physically and mentally mutilated in the most horrific way imaginable. Um, and it's very rare we actually explore the consequences of that and the thinking behind it and the purpose of it and all that sort of thing. And that's what this zeroes in on so well. Yeah, it's absolutely a winner. It's like I say, I say it's not my favourite Sherman, but that's because the Holy Terror and Chimes of Midnight are sort of right there. Um, what a CB, incredible.
Mm.
Some of the best Doctor Who. Um, I honestly have no idea how to transition to this next story following the sentence. Some of the best Doctor Who. Um, this one's going to be interesting. Okay, then. I have promised myself I'm going to do this fairly, and I've read your review. I know you're doing it fairly. It is Necromantia, a story that is infamous. Um, I will let you review it first.
Okay. From the sublime to the, well, I wouldn't call necromantia ridiculous, but sublime it ain't. There's this planet with witches on it. They sound exactly how you would imagine witches would sound. Fair enough, only since this is audio, it's often the entire focus of a scene, so you hear lots of cackle cackle, eye of newt, cackle again, over and over. I suspect I didn't find this quite as annoying as some listeners. They're witches, they match the brief, but there's still nowhere for this kind of performance to go. Pursuing/attacking these witches are some military guys, most of whom are killed. The survivors are horrible, actually, particularly Commander Harlan, for reasons we'll get to. They all work for an evil corporation that treats its workers like scum. Said company is led by a slithery guy called Mar, who's like the Martin Jarvis character in Jubilee, only without the jokes, or, to be honest, the point. There's also a researcher on the planet with his own agenda, who Perry slightly falls for, despite him having pretty bleak intentions for her and Erimem. And somewhere outside all this is a mysterious being in another plane of existence whose life or death is at the root of all the problems. What happens to him could have a knock on effect in the universe. I wasn't far into this before I wondered which bit I was meant to care about. The witches are monsters, so not them, presumably. The evil corporation are transparently horrible, so they can do one. The researcher mostly just talks to himself so we can picture the scene before he conveniently gets Perry naked, a mishap that somehow endears him to her. Perry acts like a featherweight girly girl in this, bit disappointing. And then there's Commander Harlan, a grisly voiced veteran who, for no reason other than the obvious, threatens to rape Erimem. Later on, Mar threatens Harlan's family. Oh no, how will the rapist get out of this one? I did say threatens to rape. Not that this is a defense of the scene, but I think the point often gets misconstrued. Erimem has a line later on to say that he could have done worse than use his fists and feet on her, which suggests he did not, in fact, do worse. But first of all, why leave it so long to tell us what didn't happen? There's an end of episode in between. Second of all, why do the scene in the first place? Within the story, it just makes an already unpleasant guy seem irredeemable, and he's not even the villain. Apart from that, it's created a handy lightning rod for why people hate this story. I've already spent a paragraph on it. The basic gist of Necromantia seems like a mess. Evil companies, space marines, zombie witches, and a bloke living in a time loop somewhere would make quite the Venn diagram, even for Doctor Who. The concept of eternal life is time honoured enough to be worth exploring, but we don't make much of it here, apart from in the Doctor's rather odd post death chats with Simon Williams. There comes a point where he pleads, rather half heartedly, with the witches that if they don't flummox the thingamy, then the Kajigga will what's it or something. And it just doesn't feel all that pressing in the moment. Certainly not enough that the Doctor's and Erimem's dueling would be sacrifices at the end feel earned. Fair's fair. This attempt to do something with Erimem's royal heritage does seem like a good idea in theory. The story maybe wasn't the place to try it. For all the offence caused by that one scene, Necromantia is quite a lightweight story. It's just a lot of cackling witches and yelling army guys, somehow all orbiting a bloke in his time corridor slash holodeck. It doesn't feel like a story with a lot on its mind, but I don't think it's truly foul enough to earn its worst ever reputation. As it raced towards its end, and it does race, part 4 is only 22 minutes, I found myself checked out already, despite the Doctor ostensibly having died in an earlier episode. It's all just a bit thin and annoying, with one really ill advised scene as a dubious cherry on top. So I think a lot of people just don't get past the witches, which is sort of, like they were the lucky ones. I really don't think it's that bad. It's just it doesn't pull itself together, and you kind of go, y- you know, there's nothing there's nothing really wrong with having a character do something revolting if we're meant, if that's meant to tell us something about the character and go, okay, well that character, steer clear, they're a bad guy. But he's not. Like, he's not very nice, but he's not a villain. He's one of many people in this kind of big soup. And it's like, well, does it help that we hate him now? Um, doesn't really help Erimem as a character. I think she has some surprisingly dark moments in this, which are probably related to that happening to her. But you know, it's all just a bit. I don't know. I don't know about this one.
It's a bit icky because of that scene, and it just
Yeah.
makes everything else seem more so as well. I agree with you. It's, I mean, it's probably the most stupidly advised cliffhanger. It's part of the cliffhanger, isn't it? It's not the actual moment the sting kicks in, but it's part of the cliffhanger build up, and it just it shouldn't be in there. It didn't need to be in there. Like we got that this guy wasn't very nice. Yeah, there's just no need for it. That there is no justification in any way, shape, or form to just bring rape or the mention of rape, the threat of rape into this story. I mean, I'd say into Doctor Who at all, really. I mean, I know, okay, yes, Keys of Marinus and various other, it's not like the concept of rape doesn't exist in the Whoniverse, but did it need to exist here? Did we really need that? Yeah, it serves no purpose, and it just feels grim as a result. It just feels a bit grubby. Um, the rest of the story, it it just feels like a sequence of events that I'm not particularly bothered about, and things happen in this story that I should be. Like, the Doctor has a pretty gruesome death, but it's the same cliffhanger with this incident with Erimond, so you're too busy going, "Blimey," from that bit to actually acknowledge the fact that the Doctor is murdered in a very, very gruesome way. Obviously, he's unmurdered by the end of the story, which, I mean, that's the other thing. Like, you just know he's going to be unmurdered by the end of the story. So it's, yeah, it just doesn't do much for me. Um, I promised myself I'd find something I liked here, and I'm actually going with part one. I think it's part one kind of sets up um, an area of a space that feels lived in. So we revisit the Garizone system where we've been there before in come on, Johnston, what's the
Sort of
Cyberman
Orion?
story? Sword of Orion,
Sort of
thank you.
Orion, yeah.
Yes. That Cyberman story with the Eighth Doctor and Charlie. Yes, Sword of Orion. And we go there again. We see Garizone again. And like we're there, the Doctor and Perry and RMM are just they're visiting there, they're in a bazaar, they're just kind of checking it out. And the adventure begins quite organically, and it feels like it builds up an awful lot. As you say, there's an awful lot going on. There's lots of characters doing lots of different things. And I think part one actually does a fairly good job of just establishing them and making this feel like a very real, very breathing part of the universe. And then it all goes wrong because the rest of the story happens. But yeah, I think we've got a good first episode here. It sort of it does a good job of introducing all the pieces and where they are. It's when it starts moving the pieces about that things go a little bit wrong. The witches are annoying as hell. No way around this. Like, if you're ever going to direct space witches, just do it in a way that isn't that. And Big Finish does it again. There's Planet of the Witches in the Fourth Doctor Adventures, and it's the same witchy voices, the same sort of
Yeah, I just wonder
shrill,
how what can you
irritating.
do? I mean,
Yeah,
unless you just have a more subtle kind of evil sort of stepmother kind of person, but yeah, like, the Shakespeare code in the new series, they were all over exactly the same thing. It was
yeah,
your Halloween witches.
yeah. And it's like you can still have them manic and cackling, but not quite like that. That there's got to be a good way of doing this, and this isn't this isn't done here. Um, Beyond that, I think Simon Williams is a bit wasted. He's not in it as much as he should be, considering he's quite well beloved in Doctor Who circles. Um, I think
He's so
anybody that was
affable.
in,
I mean, just having him, like, chatting away in a cricket pavilion in, not really a
yeah,
cricket pavilion with Peter Davison, and you think, "This does not feel like a hugely dramatic moment." The Doctor is
no,
dead ostensibly at this point, and you just think, there's nothing wrong with taking a weird swerve. Like, Stephen Moffat does that stuff all the time. You have a big weird thing happen, and then suddenly we're somewhere else. But I think this particular combination is like, I don't think it helps to kind of calm it down suddenly like that. I
I
mean, maybe they
agree.
should have tried and killed off, not killed off, but, maybe had Erimem in that role because she's still fairly new. So there's still the possibility to listeners that they might get rid of her. But,
Well, if you're
nah.
into RMM in post-death weird dream worlds with loads of crickety stuff going on, the good news is there's a story for you just over 10 releases away. Um, so it's the more I think about it, the more actually this story then eventually gets done a little bit better in the Roof of the World. It's not the same thing, but you can definitely draw A to B. Uh, that's all I've got on this one, really. It's not the worst release in this range from a lot of perspectives. It just happens to unfortunately do quite a lot, not very well, and it sort of suffers for that. And yeah, it doesn't deserve a good reputation. It does deserve a bad reputation. It perhaps doesn't deserve the quite as bad reputation as it has. I think a lot of people would go, yeah, that's the worst in the monthly range. I would not. There's a couple of other candidates not too far off, actually. Um, I mean, I'm talking about this like it's going to be some big surprise when I go, oh, the Creed of the Chromon is pretty bloody dreadful. Uh, but there we go. Um, but immediately off the top of my head, from the next 20 or so releases, Creed of the Chroma, as I've mentioned, and also Scaredy Cat comes to mind as not fantastic. So yeah, we're in the bottom bit, but we're not at the bottom. Let's say that. Okay, the next one we're doing a sidestep, because I don't get this. Like there were a couple of sidesteps early on that didn't sell so well, so we said, right, we're not doing it again. And they did it again, but they did it with the TARDIS team from the two sidesteps that perhaps we less wanted to see again. Don't get me wrong, I really want to see the Seventh Doctor, Ace and Benny. I would like 37 box sets of the Seventh Doctor, Ace and Benny. But the Dark Flame, we do. We have that TARDIS team, and it is a sidestep. And bring back Frobisher. Come on. We want the big talking bird. But this is not the big talking bird. This is the big talking, very, very camped up Michael Praed. So go ahead. What's your review of the Dark Flame?
This is another one from Big Finish's not very popular collection. From the outset, I'd say it's not as problematic as Necromantia, although weirdly the two share some plot elements. This story also concerns an alien cult worshipping a force from another plane of existence, where said cult has taken a very roundabout route to capture the Doctor. It's enough that I'm surprised they sequence the two stories next to each other. The Dark Flame is a tad more concise with its ideas, although they're not hugely interesting. There's a resurrected emissary for the Dark Flame whose purpose is to bring forth the Dark Flame. You will hear the Dark Flame a lot in this. Solid drinking game material there. He appears to win people over with the usual promises of power, but later this is fudged into mind control instead, which made me wonder why the villains bothered to talk to each other. Much of the dialogue is a mix of two villains, the emissary Remnex and Slide, aka the did they really get Michael Praed part. Both are doing their most evil voice possible, particularly Praed, who positively lathers up the microphone. It feels a bit redundant having both, especially when so much of what they're saying is sub Darth Vader stuff about the dark side. What is the Dark Flame? Settle in because the script is going to tell you about it, but not in an especially showy, dramatic way. It got to the point where I wish there'd been an earlier story with the Dark Flame running amok, just so this one could be the desperate sequel slash prequel to avoid those stakes happening again with us knowing what the stakes are. Instead, it's only marginally more tangible than the universe bothering thing from Necromantia. This one makes you mega evil, I suppose. The main selling point here is probably its new adventurousness, but really all that means is that Bernice is here, with an honourable mention to her robot pal, Joseph. Benny is wittily written, and Lisa Bowerman is wonderful as per. If I'm annoyed that she gets mind controlled for most of it, maybe we can write it off as a new adventures reference. Sophie Aldred seems to be pitching Ace a little bit older, unless I'm imagining it. Sylvester McCoy, on the other hand, has had more confident ground to work on than this. There's a lot of, was that really necessary, grandstanding and technobabble, with a lot of the selling of the threat sitting on his shoulders. It's not, for what it's worth, a very new adventures portrayal, although I'm only half sure what that means. The Dark Flame isn't dreadful. It goes through the evil villain motions and has a couple of decent shocks. I may have spoiled one of them above. Its main issue is failing the show don't tell test, but it could probably have done with a more nuanced concept of evil to tell us about in the first place. I'd still welcome more mainline Who stories with Benny in them, and it's a shame that largely did not come to pass. And on that subject, I believe that Lisa Bowerman felt somewhat in the way when she was doing stories with Sylvester and Sophie. She's mentioned that before in interviews. I think that's a shame, but I kind of understand it. At the same time, though, and I think I mentioned this when we talked about the Shadow of the Scourge. I wish there were more Doctor and Benny stories. I didn't particularly, feel that the books gave us enough of those. The new adventures that we're coming from here, they were all too quick to go. Well, let's just bring Ace back, and then Ace goes, and they go right. Well, let's bring in two more companions, which is fine. Those companions are very good, but that unique selling point of the Doctor and Bernice just doesn't really exist very heavily. Um, and I think it's a bit of a shame that Big Finish perhaps couldn't put it together, or nobody suggested it. But I know the side steps didn't sell very well, but I kind of feel like that's the sort of thing they would get away with now to some extent. I mean, as long as it's not, too sort of racy for the sort of Cardiff approval that we know it all goes through. But but yeah, they come up with mix and matches all the time these days. So I kind of feel like, what if the Seventh Doctor and Benny were a thing? You know, that would have sold. Yeah, I think it's quite hard to put the new adventures on audio because what does that mean? And does that mean anything to listeners? Not necessarily. Yeah, I think it's a bit unfortunate, this one. It's not, not the worst thing, but does not quite work.
Yeah, it's they try something. I feel as though they're going a little bit, trying to go a little bit new adventures with it while trying to keep it a bit more Big Finish, not quite family friendly, but you know what I mean, which considering necromancy is a bit ridiculous. Um, yeah, I've not got much to add about this one, to be honest. I actually quite enjoyed it, but I was listening to it immediately after Necromantia, and it's good to hear the Seventh Doctor, Ace and Benny together, regardless of what's going on. The camp as Hell Michael prayed was quite fun. Um, it's a bit grim, it's a bit miserable, but it's basically a generic runaround, isn't it? It's not. I don't think it's actively doing anything badly. Um, or certainly no more than other Doctor Who does. It's just not doing anything actively great either. You do hear the words "the dark flame" a little bit too much. I'm not going to attempt the drinking game because I sort of want to keep my liver going for a bit longer. Uh, but yeah, I don't think it has much to offer. It fills a release slot, and you get to spend just over 2 hours with a TARDIS team that we don't see enough of. And if it's this story's fault that we don't get to spend enough time with that TARDIS team, then actually that pees me off a little bit because they're a good team. We love them. And yeah, we do have the new adventures of Beneath Summerfield. We did do the Dr. Benny and Ace for 2 sets because it doesn't count. It's sort of later in Benny's life, and the Doctor and Ace just kind of happen to be there when she's doing stuff. Yeah, it doesn't hurt. I'd listen to it again. I'd listen to any of these again. What am I on about? But I'd listen to it again and not sort of going, oh, I've got that one to look forward to. What is absolutely horrible, and I probably would avoid listening to again unless I happen to be doing a marathon, is its sequel. There is a Bernice Summerfield story, and I'm trying to remember its name. It's The Draconian Rage, which is a sequel to this, and it's horrible. It is one of the most unpleasant listens in Big Finish history. It just like, if you like very, very, very horrible things happening to Benny and it all being quite graphic, this one is for you. It makes Just War look a bit tame. And that's probably where I'm going to leave that one. I do not enjoy the Draconian Rage. I am not squeamish. I am not averse to depictions of violence in the media. I'm not adverse to depictions of violence in Doctor Who, but this puts Benny through the ringer. And I think that's perhaps another reason I don't enjoy the Dark Flame all that much. It's because I know what happens to Benny next. So yeah, it's there. It's, if you've not heard it, listen to it. It's been a few years since I heard it, so I might have entirely oversold what goes on, the memory cheats and all that. But I remember it not being a very nice thing to listen to. And it's, I think it's a bit of a weaker story than the Dark Flame as well. I feel as though I'm saying the Dark Flame as much as the characters in the Dark Flame say the Dark
We're
Flame.
getting our money's worth out of that dark flame.
We are
Definitely.
absolutely getting our money's worth out of that Dark Flame. It's not going to go out. Dark Flame. Should we move on from the Dark Flame?
Please.
Okay, well, after the Dark Flame comes Doctor Who and the Pirates, which, this is another one that everyone loves, isn't it? So go on, tell us about Doctor Who and the Pirates.
Okay. The dream team of Jacqueline Rayner and Maggie Stables returns for this, let's face it, pretty special release. Doctor Who and the Pirates tells a story within a story with unreliable narrators, called out cliches, and a wholehearted musical episode. Plus, Bill Oddie's in it. It's one of those releases that really puts up front the Big Finish credo about loving stories, which ones you can tell, how you tell them, and how to make the most of the audio medium while doing so. The story breaks down quite neatly in ways that have different appeals. Evelyn is telling all of this to a student, Sally, a brilliantly indignant Helen Goldwyn, only Evelyn isn't very good at telling stories, so she fudges bits and gets some of it wrong. She isn't much cop at character voices either, so from our perspective, the crew is all one actor playing multiple parts with very similar names and voices, something Sally calls out immediately. These little wrinkles made me laugh a lot. It takes real confidence to tell a story badly, well. The second episode is perhaps a bit of a lull, as it leans into exposition and scheming, with the Doctor and Evelyn figuring out how to deal with the mad red Jasper, Oddie in his element. The Doctor picks up the story here. Then we're on to the Gilbert and Sullivan pastiche via one of the funniest cliffhanger endings ever to exist, and it's simply one of the heights of Big Finish. Colin Baker prances confidently through the whole thing. The melodies perfectly suit the theme. The lyrics are Doctor Who-ish and very funny. And best of all, it's here that the emotional heart of the story, Sally's crisis and long dark night of the soul, becomes clear. They could so easily have done a musical episode just for a lark, and larks are great. Look at the One Doctor. But to use it as a means to wheedle a painful truth out of a suffering character is, well, that's the good stuff. Bottle it. The plot is really very simple. It's a pirate story, which, as Sally points out, owes much more to Robert Louis Stevenson than real history. There's a search for a treasure map and some murders and walking the plank besides. The Marian conspiracy was similarly modest with its machinations, but both stories prize characterization above all that. It's another great one for Evelyn, who uses compassion and creativity to help a friend in a way that feels quintessentially like her. It's a seminal text for Old Sixie, with Colin playing the Doctor on that same mission of mercy. And Helen Goldwyn, the only other definitely real person here, believably manages an arc in between all of that pirate merriment. We ended on a bit of a song, which once again works for the emotional progress of the story rather than just being a gag, although the closing yo ho version of the Doctor Who theme is equally funny and sweet. And speaking of gags, Nick Pegg is excellent as the insufferable ship's captain, while Bill Oddie walks a fine line, or perhaps a plank, between pantomime and menace. Doctor Who and the Pirates genuinely may not be for everybody, with its shifting methods and rather compartmentalized plot. I'm mostly here for the character work, however, and if they can do that well and attach it to jokes that know how to work with a story rather than blaring over the top of them, then I'm all aboard. Yeah, just fairly unabashed about this one. This is my jam. I definitely liked it.
I mean, this is excellent. It's wonderful. It's the kind of story you can only tell with Doctor Who. Bill Oddie is perfect. The musical episode is beautifully nonsensical. Script is just incredible. Like only Jacqueline Rayner can weave this kind of story together. Fair play to all of the cast for just fully having a go. It's not for me.
Fair enough.
Like I fully recognise that this is some of the best written, acted, produced, Doctor Who ever, and it's just not my cup of tea. It's just not. Yeah, but I fully appreciate it's totally a me thing. Just like this is brilliant. It's so good. I'm glad so many people do love it, but I I merely like it. I merely appreciate it. So it's not a candidate for worst of the monthly range. In fact, it's if I were to kind of list my preference of all 275 releases, I'm fairly certain this would fall pretty comfortably in the top half. But it's yeah, a lot of it's lost on me, but I fully appreciate that's just a personal thing. There's a lot to enjoy. You've kind of mentioned most of it, the sort of emotional heart of it and the fact that it actually plays quite a significant part in Evelyn's arc from this point onwards. She's going through a bit of a it's not very nice traveling with the Doctor phase, which kind of starts here and really goes into Project Lazarus and really carries on through to arrangements for war. And it's good that we're doing this with Evelyn because, I said before, she's a great companion. It's absolutely wonderful that she's still really strong this deep into the range, but they needed to do a little something with her. And I think making her have a bit of a horrible time in Jubilee and this and Lazarus was the right thing to do with her. Yeah, the pirate stuff's fun. The main thing for me, I think the biggest problem I have with it actually is the pace at which the pirate story is told. There's just a little bit too much stop and start and questioning the reliability of Evelyn's storytelling and all that kind of thing. Um, what's probably actually quite a fun two-part pirate yarn kind of gets lost in something bigger. And that's the point. I know that's the point. I know that's what we're all here for. And I know that this should not be a two-part story with all the narration and the other stuff cut out. But yeah, I just find it a bit frustrating how we're two parts in and basically, okay, a ship's being set on fire. That's basically where we're up to narrative-wise. But there's more than that going on. And I'm being a bit grumpy about it. But no, it's excellent, and I love anything that Jack Rayner does, and continues to do, and long may she continue to do, because her Doctor Who is always excellent, even if it's not specifically my cup of tea, which is okay.
Yeah. I mean, this one, it's doing fourth wall breaking stuff, which is always a little bit Marmite with people, I think. I really like the idea of that sort of thing. Um, and I just think she's got a good handle on it. But yeah, it's potentially kind of Marmite idea. I think I'm kind of very fond of it as well because possibly the first time I listened to it, I was on a very long and boring coach trip, most of it at night, and this really cheered me up during that. So that's kind of mentally, I'm sort of still sat on a coach when I listen to it.
I honestly can't remember the context that I first heard this. This is certainly not the first time I've heard it. It's not even the second. But yeah, I genuinely can't remember when I first heard this. Must have been an earlier on one that I heard. Um, Maybe that's where my sort of ultimate slight "it's not for me" comes from. Maybe I sort of went into it a bit young and a bit naive and not quite sure what I was in for, and ended up quite, not quite getting it, and not quite being prepared for what it was, sort of thing, I guess.
Mm.
Um, then again, how someone could look at a CD cover that says Doctor Who and the Pirates or The Last That Lost a Sailor and not expect to get exactly what you get is slightly beyond me. Yeah, it's good. I'm glad it exists. I'm really glad other people enjoy it more than I do, but this is just not one that lands in my particular area of enjoyment. But that's okay. And there's other stuff here that I really enjoy, and there's other stuff here that other people enjoy more than I do, and that's the whole point of Doctor Who. And I think generally the world's a better place because it's all up for discussion. There we go. That's that. Okay, well that's our 5 for today. We're continuing nicely. We're going to have a bash at 6 for the next one, aren't we? We're going to go all the way through to Master.
See how we go.
So join us for the next 275 episode, which will be Creatures of Beauty, Project Lazarus, Flip Flop, Flip Flop again, I guess, Omega, Davros, and Master. We'll leave this one there though, because we need to go away and discuss which order we're going to listen to Flip Flop in, obviously. So I will say goodbye and thank you to Gareth.
Dark Flame, everybody.
Dark Flame. We'll be back for more Dark Flames. No, we won't. We'll be back for more podcasting soon. Goodbye now. Dark Flame.